Welcome to the Startup Grind.
And I appreciate everyone joining us for this sales and marketing crash course for technical founders. Steph and I have been lucky to work with a number of different technology companies, mostly in the software space, on developing what they're doing to accelerate growth from a bit more holistic perspective in how sales and marketing work together. We're starting out with a lot of the basics here. I know some of our recommendations may seem rudimentary, if you will. Find out, sharing the, what are you seeing?
We're seeing your meeting notes, so we don't see the full screen. Now that's better.
Interesting. So I can't shift focus, I suppose. Okay. So our perspective is from building a foundation from best practices. We want to avoid a lot of things that are the most ignored, overlooked, taken for granted puzzle pieces that cause the need for repair later. And I'll let Steph talk a little bit about challenges. Steph?
Yeah, I mean, common challenges faced by founders in general is what message resonates with the people that are going to buy my product. I mean, quite frankly, we're out here, obviously we have passion projects and we care about what we're working on, but the name of the game is customers. And so the biggest challenges I've seen is really just what really is marketing and sales, like for real. We have this field of dreams fallacy where we think if we build it, they will come. And quite often that is just not true. So that's common challenges that we see all the time. And we'll get into some of the other like more minute challenges in the presentation. Jeff, you're muted.
We wanted to also let you know that we're coming at this from a place of agile business practices and a strong sense of measurement, very data-driven, also a very human-centric and collaborative approach to business. And our framework at Growth Sandbox is one of accelerating growth. So everything that we're trying to do is advancing that from an early stage perspective as opposed to later on in business where we're looking more at scale. So we give consideration to that, but we are looking at growth as the main objective. And there's a lot of stuff. We're going to go pretty fast. Please don't let it deter you or scare you away. We're just fitting as much as we can in the hour. There's plenty of opportunity to share, follow up more, and we're quite available for that. And with that, Steph, you want to
head next.
Rock and roll.
All right. So the foundation of marketing is making sure you're talking to the right people, defining your target audience. Go to next slide. So why is it important for you? Just maybe say some things in the comment thread. Why do you think it's important as a technical person or even not a non-technical person to understand who your target market is? Let's see. I can't see these comments. So Rich, if you see them, will you shout them out? Kind of quiet.
No, is Rich...
Nope, I'm in the chat. So it's all right. There's not really anything in the chat. So why would you want to know your target market? Well, it should really drive what you do, right? Again, we talked about, we kind of have this view that if we build it, people will come, and that's just not true. We're here to solve a problem that somebody has, right? There's a lot of solutions in the marketplace looking for problems to solve, and we want to be a solution that is solving an actual problem. So here's a definition that you should take down: ideal client profile, or ICP. You'll hear a lot of marketing people talk about this a lot: ICP, ICP, ICP. This is essentially the person that when they hear your product, they're going to buy because you're solving their problem. They're vital for revenue generation, and these are the people that are most likely to buy. They're most likely to be loyal. They're the ones on Reddit, giving you a shout out, or Quora, or wherever. And they're going to be the ones referring you to others. So ICP, when you're defining your ICP, next slide, Jeff. There's a lot of different things that go into it, right? So we're going to take a look at a couple of examples here, high-level example. These are two different companies. The one on the left is Power. They do, as you can see, apps for websites. Can anyone tell me what you think their ideal client persona is? Yeah, so you don't waste resources talking to the wrong person. Great answer, Scott. So their ideal client persona is going to be your small business owner, and specifically a small business owner that sells online, right? And you can kind of tell who that is just by looking at the first part of their homepage. Now, Dashlane, some of you guys probably know Dashlane on here. Who do you think their ICP is? So their ICP is going to be your, well, they have business and consumer product, but we're looking at the business product here. So they're IT admins, they're CISOs, those kind of people that are going to be really interested in making sure your business is protected in this wonderful cybersecurity world that we have these days. That's going to be their ICP. Next slide, Jeff. So let's talk about defining your ICP. When you're defining your ICP, there's really three kinds of information that goes into it. You have demographic, right? This is your age, your occupation, your location, just very demographical information. Do they have a family? If you're looking at a B2C product, you're thinking about, are they a homeowner? Are they not a homeowner? Where is their revenue level? If you're a B2B, you're thinking about, like, are they mid-market? Are they small business, et cetera, right? And then you have behavioral. So behavioral is going to be things like, where do they hang out on social media? Are they on LinkedIn? Are they on Instagram? Do they have groups that they join, like Facebook groups or LinkedIn groups? Where else are they hanging out and being, right, in their behavior? Do they read email? Is email a good channel for them? Are they glued to their phone, or are they more on their desktop? Because mobile versus desktop is also going to have a different strategy, right? And then you have psychographic information. These are things like, are they impulsive or are they more apprehensive? Hold on. You're going to get to the point of, like, looking at IT admins, for example. They're going to be more apprehensive. They're going to take their time looking at something because they want to look at something that has a lot of security. Your B2C is going to be a little bit more impulsive. When they see a shopping ad or something of that nature, they want something that's going to bite and jump, right? So those are kind of the three ways. And how you get there is you ask these 5 questions and go as far and deep as you can. So who are they? Next question is, what do they do? What do they do in their work life? What do they do at home? What does the decision maker in a company do? How do they make decisions? Let's hit the next question. What do they care about? Looks like I missed a question mark. That's okay. What do they care about? What is the things that's going to drive them or motivate them to do things differently or look at something? What is in the news that they're probably reading right now? What are the things that they are going to talk to their friends about? What are the things they're going to ignore? That's actually a good thing too. You can cut that out and take that out of your messaging. Where do they hang out? Where do they do research? What news station are they listening to? Where are they? Are they reading? Are they watchers? Are they get their information solely from TikTok? Like, what does that look like? And your last question that you can ask is, what influences their behavior? So are they looking to get the next promotion? Are they looking to meet a guy online? What's going to influence the behavior as it relates to your product, right? Next slide. And so here's how you can start to do your research. Start with your current customers. You have current customers in your base, likely, even as an MVP or a seed early stage startup. So who are those people? You can even take a look at who they are before you ever even talk to them. You can take a look at recorded sales calls, recorded support calls, and you can also do customer interviews. Next. You can do surveys and interviews directly with them. If you are going to do interviews and surveys, I highly recommend the book called The Mom Test. It's all about making sure that you create stuff that's not biased so that you don't get answers that you're just looking for. Competitive analysis is another great way. What are your competitors doing? What is their message saying? Try to guess who their ICP is by looking at their website, their material, their social medias. Go to number 4. You can do what's called a complementary analysis. So what are the other products that your customers are going to be using, right? So if you are targeting IT admins, likely they're also looking at what SSO login products. They're probably looking at other identity access management products, and you can glean a lot of information from a complementary analysis too. Number 5 is industry reports. We all know these are out there, but you can go look at Gartner. You can also check out the review sites as well, like G2. They're going to have a lot of information. If you read the reviews of some of your competitors and read some of your own reviews, that's going to give you some more information as well. Number 6, that's the review sites. Yep. And then number 7, AI research. Go ahead and hit it 2 more times. So we are living in the wonderful generation of AI, and AI is not perfect, right? But there is a lot of information to be gleaned there. You could pop up a free session of ChatGPT and just say, this is what my product does. Who do you think my buyers are? It's going to spit out like 3 or 4 or 5 ideas, and then don't stop there. Ask more qualifying questions. Why do you think this buyer needs this product? You can get really, really deep and have AI spit out and have you get to know your ICP really, really well. Just make sure you always qualify this against the data in your company with your real customers. And if you don't have a lot of customers to qualify this against, you can always test messaging. You should always be testing messaging anyway, but that is something I just want to put a little asterisk by, like, don't 100% rely on AI, but it is a great tool you can use. Next. And then once you do that research, you're going to want to start looking at, there's multiple kinds of buyer personas. You have your decision makers. These are the people that write the check, right? But then you also have influencers. So a really good example of this is when I first joined Power, I was brought on to help build out their email program. And one of the first things I realized was their email homegrown system that they built out was not great. And they needed an ESP, an actual email service provider. So I went out and looked at the email service provider, but I could not make the decision and write the check, right? But I was a massive influencer for email service providers, and eventually it was HubSpot for that thing. So you want to take a look, who's the person that writes the check, and then who is the person that influences the person that writes the check? And make sure you look at those in different scopes. Next slide. And then there's really 2 levers that you have in your messaging. You can either reduce someone's pain or you can increase their pleasure. And that's it. Those are the only 2 underlying motivators for everything that there is. So when you're understanding pain points, you just want to look at, Am I reducing their pain? Do they have a fear of this? Is there something that they're trying to avoid? Is there something that's frustrating, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Or am I increasing their pleasure? Does this give them the chance for a promotion? Another really great example of increased pleasure next is going to be Snapchat. So Snapchat does these things called streaks. There's actually a lot of apps out there that do streaks. Streaks give you a little dopamine hit. That's your increased pleasure. On, like for Dashlane, next is going to be autofilling passwords, right? How freaking awful is it to remember long, complicated passwords, different passwords for every single place you log into? And then, when you don't, you have to reset the password, go log into your email, and oh gosh, do I remember the password for my email? And then go find it in your email and then go back and type it in. Like, autofill solves a lot of issues. That's solving a pain point. Next.
So
Jeff's going to take this part.
yeah. And just so we're clear, these things are very connected when it comes to what we're moving into, which is having unique value proposition. The most important initial thing is basically what Stephanie's been going over. That ICP becomes critical, obviously, in what makes your value proposition unique is how deeply you're understanding your customer, right? Knowing their pain points or desires, clearly defining what their main problem is, or their challenge or the desire that that segment is facing, right? And I have covered them all just about. And then it's looking at your own product and what it offers and listing out. And I really recommend you do this. It's kind of a maybe old school way to go about it, but listing your features and benefits and what the capabilities of your solution are. And then you're able to map them to those desires and what the pain is. And if I can go over that. So we're trying to get to this clear, concise statement, right, that communicates your unique value. And the highlighting the key benefits and differentiating them from your competitors is what we're after. The competitive advantage, I'm not going to keep going over what I think Stephanie has well covered. This is back to the ICP. Your value proposition is still based on how deeply you understand your customer and what differentiates you from your competitor. And we want to define what that unique value driver is. And I want to give you a little formula here that a lot of companies use, which basically just says for this target customer, your product's unique in this way, and it produces that primary benefit, right? And then testing and refining this in a very iterative process, it's something that is going to change. And I want to give you a couple of real quick examples here of Intuit, which is pretty familiar, right? Have complete financial confidence. I think most people are familiar with what Intuit does. And Evernote, I don't know if that logo is still quite as familiar. Always love that app, but accomplish more with better notes. These are probably a bit more concise because of brand strength. When you're starting up, when you're launching something new, coming back around to that formula, which I can share again if anybody wants it, is definitely what's going to set you apart. Coming up with this compelling, unique value proposition, if you will, is going to feed into pretty much everything else that you do, right? I want to back up just a little bit. The unique value driver on number 4, sorry to bounce around just a little bit, but I wanted to say that this is a cornerstone piece not to be missed. And it does take some digging and some refinement and really looking at all of these different factors, but it still comes back around to how well you've done on that ICP. And then we want to talk about how we're communicating it. And I welcome any questions. I realize I'm flying through this a bit. Once you have that final consistent UVP that you can share, that unique value proposition, it is the guts of all of your marketing and sales collateral. Your website, pitch deck, social media, promotional materials. You just want to ensure that your messaging remains consistent, that it's aligned across everything. The multiple rounds of refinement is just, it's an iterative process, and it does require that you revisit it, and therefore you're a little bit less pressure to get it exactly right off the bat. And that's based, again, on some of the things Stephanie said about the ICP. It's coming back to that customer audience again and again and seeing how it resonates. So market conditions change. You gain new insights into your ICP. Target customers' needs and preferences change. So just regularly revisit and update. And with that, unless Steph, you have any other notes here, I'm going to move into coming up with our strategy for marketing and sales.
Yep, you can hit the next slide. We're going to go through 4 sections here pretty quick. And by the way, we'll be answering questions at the end, so keep them coming in the chat, Brian. Nathan, I see you. All right, next slide. So building a marketing strategy. When you're building a marketing strategy, you want to think about your different channels, right? Channels are things like video, email, blogging, SEO. These are like your bigger kind of channels. In your channel types, you have your traditional, which is like magazines, billboards, radio ads, TV commercials are making a comeback and CTV, those kinds of things. And then you have your digital, which is like your social media, your SEO, your Google search, etc. Next. You also want to consider within your strategy, where are you targeting people within what's called your funnel? So in marketing and in sales, you probably have heard of your funnel, right? You've got your top of funnel, your middle of funnel, your bottom funnel. Top of funnel is going to be your kind of first impressions. Hi, nice to meet you. They're just barely getting introduced to your brand. Your middle of funnels, they know your brand or they have heard of your brand, and they're really trying to understand, is there a benefit for me? The bottom of funnel are your people who are like, yeah, I like this brand, but maybe they haven't pulled the trigger yet, right? And so your channel strategy is going to be different, and also your messaging strategy for where they are in the funnel. And then lastly, we like to make sure that we spread across what's called a peso model. So you have your paid, these are like your ads, paid social. Earned, which is like PR, news story done about you. You've earned. Some people go like apply for awards, things of that nature. Shared is going to be like your social media. You don't technically own the channel, but it's shared out there. And then owned is going to be things like your website, your email list. Make sure that you're spread across the peso model and you're not focusing too heavily on one. Let's go next slide. And then here's some other considerations. And Jeff, go ahead and pull up all 6. I'm just going to talk through these pretty quickly. So your ICP preferences, you want to make sure that you are focusing on a strategy where you can get the most attention from your ICP. What is it, the thing like that is going to catch their attention, right? We don't even have the attention span of a goldfish anymore as humans. We have less than a goldfish attention span, which is insane to think about. So you literally have 2 to 3 seconds to catch their attention. So you want to think about that when you're coming in. Now, once you've got their attention, you want to make sure they have stuff to stay, right? Also look at industry norms. What else are other people out there in your industry doing? Where would your ICP expect you to show up, right? If I'm online and I'm looking at internet providers in my area, and I'm looking at a website that has all the internet providers in my area, if you're not there, I'm not going to go looking for you. Make sure you follow the 3 E's rule. So in general, your content and what you talk about in your marketing should either be educational, entertaining, or emotional. And it's even better if it can be 2 or all 3. Look at your budget. You know, if you're brand new, you might not have the budget to really knock it out of the park and pay it right away, because it can get pretty expensive pretty fast, especially if you don't know what you're doing. You can spin your wheels and spend your money. Make sure it's relevant and consistent. So make sure that your ICP is seeing you all the time and seeing a message that's relevant and hits home all the time. There's a rule of 7 in marketing. This is a little old, and I actually think the number is higher now just because our attention spans are lower, but there hasn't been any research done on it, so I don't know this for sure. But the rule of 7 states that somebody has to see you 7 times before they remember your brand. And so you have to get out in front of people and be consistent and consistently pushing your message. If you're like me and you don't like to talk really good about yourself and you don't like to brag, that can feel a bit like nails on a chalkboard. But just know that people's attention spans are so little. Just get out there and do it, right? And then there's something called content blocking. I won't get too deep into this, but content blocking helps you create a lot of content in blocks. You start with your largest thing, like a webinar or an ebook, and then you break out small pieces from that so that you then have a bunch of different social media posts from one large piece of content, a bunch of different blogs that you can do, a bunch of different videos, video shorts, etc. Next slide. It's really, really important that you are tracking your metrics and that you are testing and iterating here. And if you're tracking metrics, make sure that the metrics, and we'll talk more towards the end on the kinds of metrics to look at. Make sure you're tracking metrics that are not vanity metrics. Vanity metrics are metrics that make you feel good, but they don't do anything for your business. So these are things like likes. Likes on a post is a great vanity metric. How many likes did I get this week? But if that doesn't translate into revenue, then who cares? And then testing and iterating. I mean, if you work in the software world, you know about Agile, you know about testing and iterating and working in sprints. It's the same with your marketing. Make sure you're doing A/B testing in your marketing and your messaging. Make sure that you're gleaning or getting some sort of learning from everything that you're doing, even if it's what's a better subject line, even if it's does learn more or get started work better on a button. It can be so very simple and little, but those little things add up to a lot over time. Next. And that's you, Jeff.
Yeah. So, I think, again, as I mentioned initially, we really try and take and foster this holistic approach where sales and marketing are considered in every way together, especially early stage. This has been a conversation for a long, long time. I'm sure many of you, if I were to say, raise your hand if there's been a conflict over budget or mission or just in getting sales and marketing aligned. Over 20 plus years, I've been involved in more than one exercise to even create that alignment when the effort's disjointed. So the earlier you can make those a combined effort, the better. But we're back to I was looking at that question. Are people not able to hear?
No, we're here. They can hear. What
Okay,
question
cool.
are you?
So the foundation of what sales process you choose and what methodology you use, also for marketing process or methodology, is still clearly understanding your target market and still having complete clarity around what your ideal customer profile looks like. So I know we're hammering away at that. When you're mapping your sales process and your customer journey, this is about breaking down your sales cycle into distinct stages. Some of these are obvious, prospecting, qualifying, doing a demo, negotiating, and closing. Depending on what customer relationship management software or what else you're using, this becomes a default that you want to work on a little bit. In other words, the process should match the customer's journey, and the best person to talk to you about that is the customer. So if you are closing business, it's a great follow-up to talk to your customer and say, hey, how did our process align with how you buy this sort of thing, how you buy this technology, how you buy this software, how you buy this product? Messaging and positioning is based on a very well-crafted, unique value proposition. This is creating sales scripts and pitch decks and collateral that effectively communicates your product's benefits and how you differentiate from competition. But please don't lead with anything competitive. Lead with your value, lead with what you do best, lead with what either pain you solve or, as Stephanie pointed out, what pleasure this is creating. Run past your competition without looking at them very much if you can. And implementing sales enablement tools. So sales enablement encompasses anything that from the life of your sales people, your sales team, from training them and doing recurrent training to the materials that they're using that are customer facing, to the instruments that they're using to do their job effectively, both measuring it and keeping track of it. This all falls under this umbrella. And the most obvious of those things early stage is starting with some customer relationship management tools. I'll get into that in just a moment. We may have to come back around. So let me touch on it now. I'll know Steph is going to cover some lead generation stuff and connect the prospecting process and referral programs that we want to pay attention to in this process. But we all look at the tech. I don't want to waste a whole lot of time. I think the biggest decision typically is whether or not you use Salesforce or something else. Salesforce, HubSpot, Zoho, Nimble are kind of our top four. And the very quick thing I'll say about is this. Usually early stage, Salesforce is on the expensive side. They're the default standard, right? The old expression used to be no one gets fired for picking Microsoft. At the same time, I can say the same thing about Salesforce. What I also say is if you are putting a team in place, you'll spend less per user for Zoho, and the money that you have left over that you would have spent on Salesforce can be used on customizing it to your process, your customer's journey, and so on. We love Nimble. I think that early stage, it's not only scalable, but it's also easier to train, use, and is less expensive, and also has some things around social discovery. HubSpot, of course, is heavier on the marketing side, and CRM was what they added to marketing automation and various other tools. So like Salesforce, it does offer a more comprehensive suite and definitely worth looking at. I want to talk about implementing your sales performance management and then of course go on to continuously optimizing and iterating. So let me go back up to number 5 for a second. We're going to talk about building a team and in some later slides. I'll touch on this quickly here. Initial sales hiring has to be based on your go-to-market strategy and what you're projecting in terms of growth. We could do an entire webinar on just hiring practices, how you identify salespeople that are qualified, recruiting and onboarding salespeople that have relevant industry experience and a track record of success, of course, is recommended. But again, there's a lot we could talk about here. If you consider product-led versus sales-led strategies, you may not be hiring in this area if you're trying to do product-led, and we'll again come back around to this a bit. I'll say that providing great training that provides an understanding of what your process is, what your customer-facing best practices are. This is an area that you absolutely have to invest in if you want your team to be successful, and if you don't want to waste a whole lot of time hiring over and over and over again for the same seat. So we do recommend some things in this environment that are a little bit newer, like peer-to-peer training and accountability, where you can include gamification and role play, and that helps us continue to optimize. The sales performance data that you gather and the areas that you're able to identify for improvement are how we can continue to make this get better as you go. I recommend that Agile is applied here like it is anywhere else in the organization now, where you're even operating in sales sprints, coming back to reevaluate, see what was successful and what wasn't. But soliciting customer feedback is still the best way to figure out how you can modify your approach, modify your messaging, see where your process is lagging. They're the ones who are going to know whether or not it's working for them. And that allows us to experiment with new sales strategies and tactics and technology and measure what impact we're having. So I'll do all these too, just to go over this quickly again. The sales process, like we said, distinct stages. I want to make a note on entry and exit criteria. One big thing that I find when people put together sales cycles and they go through whatever this is repeatedly is there isn't a real strong definition of, you know, I'm in this stage, I had lunch with a prospect, therefore I can check a box and move on to the next stage in the cycle. Having your team agree on what moves it from one stage to another is a huge miss. On the sales enablement side, I'll mention the living docs. All of these things that you're creating that are tools that salespeople are going to be using are living, breathing things that you want to consistently revisit, edit, change, just as your audience may change, just as you're adjusting your ICP. In the interest of time, I think I've covered most of the rest. I'm going to hop over to prospecting and lead generation, and let Steph take that over for a minute.
So I recognize we've got 12 minutes left to the end, so we're going to fly through the rest of these slides. Absolutely fly through them. Ask your questions as we're going through, and we'll stay after to answer any questions that you're around. Next slide. So when you're doing prospect and lead generation, you have this thing about outbound versus inbound. The thing to get here, outbound means you are generating the activity you are pushing out. These are things like cold calls, cold outreach, cold LinkedIn messages. Inbound is going to mean your ICP found you. They came from the outside and came inbound to you. So that's things like downloadable ebooks, gated content. If they've signed up to your email list and you're sending within your email list, that's still considered inbound, or maybe they started a trial, or maybe they did like a demo form on your website. Next slide. When you're doing your strategy around lead generation, make sure you're using multi-channel. So you're not just hitting them at one channel, but you're hitting them all over the place. You can set up what's called retargeting, which means if somebody sees an ad and lands on your website, you can send them a different kind of ad like, hey, come back, or you can send out things for abandoned cart. You can get all of that data on your back end, right? SMS is a great way, forms, etc. And then make sure your messages are personalized. So if somebody is if you know they're a decision maker versus an influencer, you know, hey, let's have a chat and check out how we can help you with the quote pain point, right? If you know they're an influencer, maybe you could say something like, hey, want to make a great impression on your boss? And the way that you do that is just by mixing your channels. Next. And then, of course, you're going to be collecting all of this data. All of these people are going to come inbound to you through your CRM. And then it's your job to nurture the leads that you have. So once you have these leads, it doesn't mean that if they don't buy the first time they come into your system, that they're not ever going to buy from you. This is why things like newsletters work really well. Make sure that you're consistently putting out content that's interesting to them and nurture those leads to the sale. Next. Jeff, you're on mute.
Thanks, Steph. I didn't want to interrupt you with my drinking noise. So just we're talking about handling objections quickly. The primary objection types you're going to run into almost always 99% of the time fall into one of these buckets, either cost or technical or risk. Cost objections, obviously, you want to highlight long-term ROI. I'm going to flip back this real quick just to make sure that I cover this for you quickly. I'm going to give you an objection definition and a real quick way to deal with it. And for cost, it's usually ROI, cost savings, competitive advantage that your solution provides. You want to provide some detailed cost benefit analysis and case studies. Technical objections are, knowing your specs, performance benchmarks, compatibility details, and showcasing successful integrations and technical support. Risk objections are financial. Obviously, there's various kinds of risk, and this is where things come in like case studies and testimonials, references from different companies that have successfully implemented your solution, and usually emphasizing things like security, reliability, scalability. And I'm going to move over to objection should be considered buying signals. It's not a rejection to object. It's just an opportunity for more clarification, like qualifying what your value proposition is, presenting hard data, involving technical stakeholders that Stephanie had touched on previously, involve everyone who's involved in the buying decision. We're looking at offering customization and flexibility and leveraging industry expertise and obviously emphasizing continuous innovation. I can go into detail on any of these. When it comes to positioning yourself as a trusted advisor and not just a vendor, I would say that's across most of these. The other thing that is across all of this is building long-term relationships, cultivating trust, establishing yourself as a strategic partner, and not just a one-off vendor is one of the biggest ways to deal with objection. Ongoing support, training, consultation to maximize your value of your solution over time also takes care of many of these objections when you let people know that you have that value. Steph?
All right, let's get into measuring success. Go ahead and pull all 4 down, Jeff. So it's really important on your data considerations here, okay? The first thing is you have data coming in from everywhere. You likely have this already. You have your back-end data from your product, you have CRM, you have your email marketing systems, you have your ads channels, you have your website, you have product usage and behavioral, all of that. It's like data flying at you from all directions everywhere, right? So you want to make sure you define a source of truth. What is going to be the thing that is housing all of the relevant data that you need to look at? And if there is not discrimination, where one data says something in one channel, like your ads say something in one channel, but your source of truth says something different, make sure you define what is the one that you're going to go with, because that happens more times than not. Accuracy and structure is really important. So once you define what your source of truth is, if you do find those things that aren't matching up correctly, you can go in and make sure that they're calculating correctly inside of your source of truth and double check everything and consistently make sure that you're looking at the data consistently. The picture here is that if your source of truth is not trustworthy, you really just lose out a lot if you don't trust your data. Next slide. And then we want to make sure that we're looking at actionable data. I talked about this a little bit, right? Vanity versus actionable. What's going to actually allow you to make decisions to change on what you're doing? Here are some of the things that I've tracked. Now, I build this out with channels too. There's a lot of different data points that you can look at, but qualified leads, trial starts, sales qualified leads, conversion rates. How many new customers are we getting by the channel or by the campaign? Are these renewal campaigns or expansion campaigns? Are we reducing churn? Are we getting referrals? Customer acquisition cost is going to be the cost that you spent on all of the things to acquire a customer. So you might have 100 leads and 1 customer. So whatever you spent to acquire all 100 leads is the cost of that 1 customer, right? And then lifetime value is how much value is a customer to your business over the course of their entire lifetime with you. That's another thing to track across this. And then you can also look at these different views. You can do time specific, so meaning what happened over the last 6 months, or you could do cohorted, right? What happened with people that started in our product in January versus what happened with people that started in our product in July, and see if there's any differences across those numbers. Next slide.
And, when properly integrated, sales and marketing should really be looking at the same dashboard. But we can add some metrics that give at least some lead and lag indicators for progress, like the sales cycle length. This has a huge impact on forecasting and cash flow to know, obviously, the time it takes to move from a lead to initial contact to a closed deal. And that also helps optimize your sales process. Same with win rate. And obviously, the number of qualified opportunities that result in a closed deal is critical to measure that effectiveness when it comes to sales approach and other things. Average deal size, obviously, this just helps you understand the impact of your pricing strategy, upsell and cross-sell efforts, overall value proposition resonance with your target customers, which we're always revisiting. And these things contribute to. Sales velocity, I highlight, I call this my key metric, and I don't know, maybe I just like it because it's more complicated, but I'm always looking for one good number. And this is a formula for that, where you're literally taking how many opportunities you have, multiplying it by the value of your deal and your win rate, and dividing it by how long your sales cycle is taking for one velocity number. And that's great for not only planning and forecasting, but your conversation around how we're looking at the rest of the numbers that fall under it, right? Steph?
Yeah. So data visualization, I could go into this a million times over, but what would you rather look at, the left or the right? Most people, when they look at a spreadsheet of data or a bunch of a CSV of data, they're not going to be able to glean the insights like they would if it was in visualization. There's a lot of tools that can help you there. Next slide. And go ahead and pull out all three, by the way. And then use this data to make informed decisions. So you can use this to refine your customer personas, your ICP. Is it working? Is it not working? Are they responding to that? Are they not responding to it? And you can gradually adjust your ICPs. And in fact, you should be adjusting them over time consistently. Adjust your marketing campaigns. Maybe the spend wasn't exactly right. Maybe the strategy, bidding strategy on an ads, maybe the email subject line didn't perform well. And then enhancing your sales techniques too. So if you know that in marketing people gravitate to certain kinds of words, you can use those in your sales presentation too. Next. Go ahead and click all three. The things that you want to watch out for are data silos. So marketing and sales has separate data that they're looking at. That's bad. Marketing, sales, products, etc. So you want to make sure you're unified and your teams are all looking at the same thing. Vanity metrics, we talked about this a little bit. These are feel-good metrics. They don't really mean anything, and you want to make sure you pay attention to the quality of your data. Next.
So when it comes to building a high-performance team, once again, I'll say that we're not HR professionals, and but I am a big believer in this can do, will fit, especially when it comes to the sales side. The can do of a lot of things in sales and even marketing, and I would say it goes across more than that, can be trained, can be taught. But the will to do and the fit with your culture, with other people, with the team are what you really want to hire for, especially initially. And please keep in mind that every new person contributes to and changes your culture. Staying agile here and continuously learning from your customers and your market and being prepared to adapt your approach as your business evolves obviously affects the people that are involved. And when it comes to having a high performance team, as Stephanie will attest to, we are small but mighty, and I think what makes us that way is the advice that we get from mentors and advisors, the resources that we use, and getting guidance on best practices tailored that are to our industry and our specific challenges. And we would want to pass that along. So thanks for letting us kind of fly through the second half of that. Obviously, it's a considerable amount of material to cover and usually has a lot of questions, and hopefully we have some time for those. We'll stick around for a little bit to answer some.
We definitely have some in the chat too.
And I'll just touch Rich here real quick. Rich, if we'll do some of this in follow-up and focus on questions.
Jeff, you guys, if you want, you guys can stay as long as you want to answer questions, as long as your audience is still here.
Yeah.
There's no one that's going to kick us out, so you can stay as long as you want.
Sounds good. Why don't we throw up the last slide, Jeff, and then we'll get into these questions. Just leave the last slide on.
Absolutely.
By the way, we do have a readiness snapshot if you want to take that. There's a QR code that links directly to that. All right, so here's the first question from Brian. This is about ICP. So if targeting enterprise how does ICP work when you have to work your way to the decision maker? Actually, Jeff, I think that's a good way for you because that's also a sales strategy.
Give it to me one more time.
Yep. If targeting enterprise, how does
Mhm.
ICP work when you have to work your way to the decision maker?
This comes down to, I mean, your ideal customer profile is still really the same, but when you're looking at personas, you're creating different personas for your different decision makers. Uh, and but your marketing is still targeting that ICP. There's definitely a different complexity. You're talking about a complex sale where there might be a group of people making a decision either by committee or by board. And what I typically recommend is that you're needing to develop a little bit more advanced sales playbook that addresses the needs, benefits, and appropriate features for each one of those decision makers. And that's something we can definitely talk a little bit more offline. But
Yeah.
if you are in a startup mode and you're targeting enterprise, I definitely recommend being very careful about cash flow and your sales cycle and how those things connect to what you're offering, especially early on if you don't already have enterprise customers.
Absolutely. And from the marketing side, sorry, Brian.
Oh, I was just going to jump in there. Thank you. It was a very good presentation. You kind of answered my questions as the slides went on, but I think the whole thing, I like the influencer versus decision maker. I have a little bit of experience, and I've had to go through a lot of influencers before I got to the decision maker. And your presentation helped give me some clarity on how to approach that. So thank you.
Great.
Yeah. And, your marketing is typically going to touch the influencer first because the influencer is likely going to be the person that works in it day to day. And the decision maker is the person that writes the check.
Right. And sometimes they have different goals. And we've had some challenges with understanding what the decision maker is looking for versus the person that we're, our initial contact. So
yeah,
thank you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
sure. And Brian, by the way, if is there an opportunity to get them in the same room?
There is, but it's usually a little bit further down the road. I have to push the value of the product to the influencer and get past that, them to open the door to get us to the decision makers. So yes, there is, but that's usually later on.
Yeah, and Brian, I'm glad to. That's a fun thing to talk about if we want to do that offline too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We
Sure.
can totally do that. All right, Nathan, how often do you pivot ICP details and track metrics on your current ICP? For that one, so I kind of mentioned this, you should be looking at your ICP pretty frequently, not overhaul it very frequently, but you should be testing everything that you have in your ICP is based on an assumption that you're building, right? And so the messaging in your sales presentations and your marketing content and everywhere else should be tested against the belief that you have against your ICP. And if you find that something is just a complete dud, it's like crickets out there, then I would venture to say that whatever you put in your ICP is maybe not what your ICP actually cares about. So how often do you pivot or adjust your ICP? I mean, if you're doing a mass overhaul of your ICP more than yearly, you're probably not actually testing your ICP and iterating. And even yearly is kind of often, to be honest. for a massive overhaul, like a rewrite kind of situation. But you should always be testing your assumptions and building out. And then also, you know, as you test new things, make sure you plug that back in, because your ICP is going to be a really good resource for everyone across your company, but also anyone new that joins, to get up to speed really quickly.
I'd go so far as to say, yeah, I was just going to say, Steph, I don't think a complete overhaul, if you're really incorporating change in your process and you are operating on an agile methodology, that shouldn't occur, because you're just tuning all the time.
Yeah.
And talking to customers all the time.
Yeah. And also like understanding if how you're talking to customers is working.
Do we have more?
Yeah, we got more in here. I just want to make sure there's nothing else there for Nathan.
Yeah, and thanks everybody for sticking around for this. We appreciate it.
So I did have a follow-up question. I'm not sure if that's next, but it's about the length of the sprints and so on, and how you measure velocity.
Go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. So he says, how long should a sales sprint be, and how do you measure velocity? We did have the velocity formula up there. Did you get a chance to capture that?
No, I missed it. I think I did see it come through, but that was after.
Yeah, we're moving pretty quick, so I'll.
You just had it on the, yep, there you go.
So, yeah, it is a bit of an advanced calculation, if you will. And I think the length of a sprint depends on you, your team, the size of your team, what your lead generation flow looks like. If you're dealing with a lot of leads and a lot of activity, then you might want to break things up a little bit more often to check your progress and do the evaluation part that you're obviously doing in between these sales sprints of outbound calling, follow-up, going through your sales motions, whatever that motion looks like, that combination of emails and conversations and what collateral you're sending out, getting to proposal, getting to contract, picking something reasonable, whether it's 2 weeks or every month, or somewhere in between. That's usually what I see. And hopefully were you able to capture that slide? I'm sure we can share these too.
Yeah, we can probably share these out. We'll give them to Rich and he can share it out as well too.
And deal value is often an average that I typically will round down, right? Just so we're estimating low. But win rate, I would also say that this all comes out of CRM. This is all CRM data. Good?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to do Caprina. I'm going to bring your question up. So how has the recent evolution of search, SGE, search generative experience, impacted SEO strategy implementation, which is a great question. Yeah. The general consensus among SEOs, and we're talking like super technical SEOs, is that right now it hasn't had a huge impact, because if you notice, the SGE answer pulls directly from articles still. It's just presented to you in a slightly different way, right? And so as long as you're following Google's formula, EEAT is their formula. I forget what they stand for. EEAT. Let me just look it up. Sorry, I'm not a technical SEO. I'm just going to look up the formula.
Yeah, that's deep. I'm glad you know that, Steph.
Yeah, well, I've been, or double eats if you prefer. Give it to me.
And while you're looking, as we're wrapping up, I'll also say thank you, Rich, and Startup Grind, and even Google and Dell, and for sponsoring and putting this on with us.
Yeah. EEAT stands for experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. So as long as you're continuing to do that and you're continuing to write with value, you should still see good positive input from your SEO channel. And it's evolving, right? I think it was March or April when Google did a re-rollout of AI, like tracking AI content. They're really dinging you for low quality stuff right now, even more so than they have in the past. And they haven't, I don't know their date for 100% rollout. I know they're past the 75% rollout for search for SGE, Search Generative Experience. So there's more to come there. I would follow SEO Moz, and I would also follow Neil
Patel?
Patel. Thank you. Those two are going to probably crack the cake before anyone else.
Did you say SEO Mons?
MOZ.
MOZ, SEO Moz.
Okay, thank you.
Names in the chat so you guys have it. There is another question in here about zero budgets. One second. Okay, with zero budget and very early, what is the best place to start? Start 100% with organic. Organic meaning you don't spend any money on it. And do consistently test your messaging across your organic channels before you ever build anything paid, because you are just going to spend a ton of money on paid if you're learning on paid. So start with, social media. Where are people following you? How do they, engagement is a good metric when you're testing your metrics, but it's not a good measurement when you're looking for revenue, right? So we're thinking about what is the metric for the outcome that you're trying to achieve. Here you're trying to achieve what is your messaging. So engagement, likes and follows are actually good in that sense, right? Not in the revenue sense, but in the testing your messaging sense. And I would go across platforms. I would actually focus only on no more than 3 platforms to start, but social media platforms, that is. And I would test your messaging across those different platforms and see who bites and see who doesn't. It's totally okay to abandon a channel if it's not working out, for real, especially very early.
I'd also ask, is zero budget just pertaining to marketing, or is there more than that, is my follow-up. The second is, we mentioned the peso model. That was originally developed by an organization. It's a book too called Spin Sucks. But if you Google peso marketing model and you use the earned, owned, and social, everything but the P really, then you'll see those as basically a menu you can order off of for things that you can create and do. And don't rule out traditional PR and various other low budget strategies that are not digital, that depending on what you're doing, it may be really beneficial for you just to do a press release.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, zero budget is for basically everything. It's not really zero, but it's very close for engineering, for every product, all of it. Right? So.
Yes, bootstrapping without any boots, we call that, and it is being very selective, and glad to talk to you offline about that also, in terms of how far along you are. But I'll ask you quickly, are you at minimum viable product?
We have a prototype. I don't know.
Okay.
Call it viable because we were hoping to get HIPAA compliance as part of our thing, and that's a huge adder in cost, and we're not ready to pull that trigger yet.
Okay. And have you done any customer validation exercise as of yet?
Yeah, interviews mainly.
Okay.
Just talking
Great.
directly to people. Yeah.
So you think in terms of measuring product market fit?
Still probably a long ways away, just because a lot of the feedback we've gotten is that things like we should name our AI bot, and it's the user friendliness of it still needs to work through.
Yeah.
We did actually get volunteers to help improve the product. So.
Well, it sounds like you're making a lot of progress for not having much budget to do it with, and I'd certainly say continue on that path. But do you have a customer yet?
No, we weren't. I mean, part of the reason is we're not. I'm hesitant to try selling in a medical space until we have our ducks in a row.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, again, we can have a conversation about that, but the early answer is still what Stephanie suggested in terms of even if you are at the prototype stage and doing the things that you're doing, then there's nothing wrong with, and I would even encourage you to do as she suggested and start sharing your journey. That vulnerable, transparent exercise will give you some legs and some initial traction.
And people want to see it too. They want to be a part of your journey.
Yeah, a little behind the scenes.
Yeah.
The other thing for you too is I would, if you're at prototype stage, you're not really at MVP yet. I would get your non-working prototype on some customer interviews. If you could offer somebody a coffee, or even like reach out to your personal network of people. People love to help you as a startup founder, like love it. So if you can get your prototype in front of people and you can ask the questions, I definitely highly encourage you to read a book called The Mom Test. I mentioned it earlier. It's all about how to ask interviews that are not biased, right? And do that first.
Yeah, I actually just downloaded a copy of the Mom Test. So.
Cool.
That's
Hey,
awesome.
Scott, did you want to come on and chat?
Sure. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Yeah,
Hey, Scott.
Hey. First of all, thank you very much. I felt like I really love what you guys do. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
The suggestion that I have is this entire thing was very much like a fire hose for me.
Yeah.
It sounded to me that we really had two different target markets here. And it sounded to me like there was two different target markets in the room. So I just wanted to share that feedback with you, specifically to give you something more actionable than just my broad comment. The last 7 to 10 minutes have been very valuable to me, because I'm at that, I have no budget for marketing. I have no budget for sales. I'm trying to find a co-founder. I have product developed. I've got very little interest, but I've got interest, which I think is pretty good at this point, considering I haven't really pushed much out there in that. So the comment that was the absolute best for me, which is actually what I'm doing, is the organic. The thing I would suggest is that maybe you put together bullet points of what organic is. It took me probably a year to figure out what organic was, because I'm not a marketing person. To me, what's organic was you tell a friend and they tell a friend and they tell a friend, and that didn't work because my friends don't have the need that I'm trying to solve and stuff. So
Yeah.
again, my suggestion is maybe if there were a way to have two different sections. I know it's very hard in a 30-minute presentation, maybe different presentations, but then that eats up different, a lot of your time and you're busy and things of that sort. So again, you've been very helpful. I do really appreciate it. Thank you for investing your time and effort in us, and hopefully it'll bear fruit for you either now or down the road.
Oh, Scott, totally appreciate it. And this is exactly the kind of thing that we've been talking about throughout, which is you can't make it better if you don't talk to the people that are participating. I would just reiterate, if you look up that peso marketing model and treat each of those 4 buckets as a menu, and you're really talking about mostly what's falling under the S and the O, social and owned. It's things that you can develop organically as opposed to things that you have to paid for in order for them to be on someone else's platform repetitively. The rest is about doing what you're doing now, I think, in terms of that co-founder exercise. There's I even see those on LinkedIn as I'm sure you do too. They're actually hunting for co-founders or listing them as job descriptions. You're probably, if you're listed as a co-founder or founder, getting some of those.
Yeah.
And that's an opportunity to have some conversations and organically. What Stephanie probably would also share is write about this. What you're sharing with us, write that post on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And you see that kind of vulnerability on LinkedIn, and they end up being the posts of where there's 700 people that end up commenting or liking or sharing, which is helping you get to your goal, I believe.
Okay, great. Yeah, I have done a little bit of it. When you're wearing 1,000 hats, it's hard to keep the cycle going and stuff. But I do appreciate the encouragement, and I'll definitely try and circle around. So far as your statement about making it public, I even have a big yellow sticky on my monitor that says, "What are you doing today? How can you make it public?" But of course, a lot of days that's just like, hey, I don't have time for this right now.
And that's great. And I can certainly speak to the value of having a great co-founder, which I'm very lucky to now. And I have experience with not having that, and experience with that being like I think what Stephanie and I are doing now. But it's taken both of us a few iterations to get to that strength, I suppose.
All right. Thank you very much. I won't take up any more time.
Oh, you're good, Scott. Thanks again.
All of us, if you have unlimited budget, you should hire us. That's what you should do to get your best top of funnel. But honestly, if you do have the budget, it's really going to be, where's your ICP hanging out, right? Are they hanging out on social media? Are they not? Are they Googling? Are they not? That's where you want to start. And then test it.
I'm going to turn off this share.
Yep.
And if that's okay with everyone.
With that, I guess I'll do a last call for questions. Feel free to just come on and talk or shoot a question in the chat. Otherwise, I will wish everyone have a great evening.